Converge Media's mission is to uplift stories of Seattle's Black community. Solid Ground's mission is to end poverty and undo racism as a root cause of poverty. How do those two missions interrelate?
One direct thing is, we put our investment in the uplift. We put our investment in Black joy. We put our investment of showing Black people oftentimes in positions and places that people never thought they would be. In that sense, representation matters. And why representation matters is when people see, a lot of times when people see something and they know that something is possible, it kind of activates something in them. And people who are struggling right now in positions of poverty, in positions of lack of enough or lack of abundance, it's important for them to be reinforced that, man, there is something else that's out there. And more often than not, Black people, poor people, marginalized people, man, they catch the brunt end of negative images and negative stories in the news. And so we think that it's important, especially for people who are trying to make their way up and make their way out, that they see a positive representation of themselves.
One of the things that makes us a little bit different, Solid Ground, as a human service provider, is that we're really active in the advocacy and activist space as well. So we take what we learn from the people who we're serving and work to change policy, state level, city level. I know you grew up with activism as part of your family life. Your mom is a noted activist in the community. Is that an element that's part of Converge too?
Yeah, my mom, first of all, she's a legend.
She is.
You know what I'm saying? If people don't know Reverend Harriet Walden, this is the founder of Mothers for Police Accountability, over 30 plus years now. What I see us as is I see us impacting change, but in a different route. In that we're here to educate and inform our community, and in doing so, hopefully activate them to get involved. And so that's where we see ourselves at. And then also, we gotta talk truth to power and be able to call out whether it's the mayor, city council, chief of police, and everything else, because that's what we need to do. That's where our voice of advocacy comes out, because we have a voice in City Hall. We have a voice there in King County. We have a voice in the state of Washington, and our voice needs to represent the needs of our community as a whole.
Yeah. You talked earlier a little bit about the amount of traveling you've done, your experience around the world. Based on that, how's poverty viewed in our community in Pacific Northwest differently than what your experience of how poverty was viewed or how poverty was responded to in other countries?
It's like in a lot of countries, people are closer to poverty. And I think that here in America and in Seattle, it's a bit different, that we have so much wealth and resource, right? There's a lot of money, a lot of wealth, a lot of resource, and a lot of people give. They're like, how do we, address issues of poverty? But it's not seen, poor people aren't seen as community members. I think on the continent, it was never that someone wasn't part of the community, right? And I think that's the biggest difference, is that there's a disconnect, right? And it's almost like with homelessness, that here in Seattle, we see that the majority of people who are experiencing homelessness or being unhoused, they're not visible. You know what I'm saying? And so people see the tents and they see these things and they're like, oh yeah, it's homelessness, we have to deal with that. That's the tip of the iceberg. Mm-hmm. At any given time, thousands of kids in Seattle Public Schools, they're in transition, you know what I'm saying? And I think that it's the same thing when we talk about poverty, is that people see the lowest levels of poverty and they're like, oh, that's what we need to address. And they forget that, man, there's a lot of people out there that are barely hanging on, There's a lot, and it's only what we're able to visually see, like the homeless in the tents, that they're like, oh, we need to address this problem. Let's clear out this encampment. Let's do this and that. There's a lot more that you don't see. It's like an iceberg. And that's what I'm saying is that when we have our community members that are facing poverty, it's like, yes, that's a state or a condition they might be in right now, but that doesn't disconnect them from our community. That doesn't make that a crime to be poor, to have less, to be in a marginalized situation. It's like we need to change the way that we look at people in our community who might not have as much as us. That's not an indication of their character. That's an indication of their current situation.
Why is this event, why is Solid Ground a good fit for you?
Because we know that we carry the weight and the responsibility of our community. Big Mama and them, our aunties and uncles have an expectation that if we're going to bring the name of Converge and my personal name, and we're going to be there at an organization, and we're going to be speaking and everything else, that those values are aligned with our same values of Big Mama, the same values of our neighborhood, the same values of our community. And not only just the values, they believe it, but they have a history of walking the talk. They have a history of good governance. They got the kind of people that you can bring over to my mama's house. You know what I'm saying? And so that's important. And, you know, Solid Ground just kind of checked all those boxes of being like, man, this is a great organization that we can get behind, that we can support, that we can uplift, that we feel comfortable that people who are viewers and supporters of Converge would agree with us that, okay, this is a dope organization.